Admiral, last night the United States launched a fourth round of airstrikes on the Yemeni Houthi missileers. You were the Allied Supreme Commander during the air war, I believe, in Serbia. How long will this take to destroy the Houthis' ability to threaten our ships? And in fact, they fired directly on Israel less than an hour ago.
Yeah, I was Supreme Allied Commander during the air war over Libya. That's probably the closest
Libya, that's it.
analog. Yeah, previously during the Balkans Wars, I was a captain in command of an Arleigh Burke destroyer launching strikes into Serbia. So I know that war pretty well. To answer the question, I'd say that from everything I can see, it looks to me like we have degraded their ability to launch strikes by about 25 to 35%. So we've done that over the course of a few weeks. I think if the Houthis are foolish enough to continue to conduct these strikes, I think their missile capability, which is pretty high to hard, I think that can be removed over the next month or two. The factors that will affect that are whether Iran wants to attempt to resupply them. We just saw a mission tragically where we lost a couple of SEALs, it looks like, of Iranians sending more weapons to the Houthis. But let's assume for the moment Iran doesn't want to play that game aggressively. I think probably 2 months and we can denude defenestrate, if you like, the Houthi rebels.
Can I focus on the missing SEALs? They're still classified as missing. If anyone can survive this long, it will be two SEALs. So prayers for them. Why did we not just sink the ship as opposed to dispatch an 8-man SEAL team to take it over?
In one word, evidence. We want to be able to turn to the international community and say, look, everything we're telling you about how connected Iran is to this Houthi movement is right here on display. And in that sense, the mission was successful. I'm with you on the SEALs. If anybody can survive, and the real key is going to be whether they have flotation gear, some kind of light flotation gear on them. I would think they would have scaling the side of a ship like that. And if folks don't know this, the way this occurred, one of the SEALs fell into the ocean. The other SEAL immediately leapt him after him. That's their protocol to try and save their fellow SEAL. Very tragic if we lose those two. Let's quite pray hard.
Now, Admiral, I want to switch to the war that is coming in Israel in the north. I began last hour with Dr. Oren and reading some Times of Israel headlines. It is clear to me that the Golani Brigade has been withdrawn and many reserve brigades have been withdrawn from Gaza because they have a small perimeter now around Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. It's going to take a year to reduce Hamas. They are refitting and resting and preparing to go into southern Lebanon unless Hezbollah draws back. What do you expect of that war, and how long do you think that front will take?
Yeah, I think you've sketched it out pretty well. What the Israelis will do is begin by softening the target sets up there. They'll go in and take out some of the shorter range surface to surface missiles. Those are the ones that are postured the closest to that border of northern Israel. I've been up there. I've toured it on multiple occasions with senior Israeli officers. They have very detailed plans to deal with and effectively to kind of roll Hezbollah back from the borders. It'll be a combined arms assault, which will include strikes, infantry, and there'll be a seagoing component of this thing. That whole border is quite, the sea frame border to the west is another front that Hezbollah will have to confront. I agree with you and what I suppose Ambassador Oren said, which is that Israel is not going to be willing to simply let the status quo belli, where they were before the war, to simply exist. Hezbollah is going to have to be restrained. Let's hope that there can be some kind of diplomatic approach here. Boy, that's hard to see from where we're sitting right now, Hugh.
I don't see it either. And I do see a need for 150 millimeter shells, is what Dr. Oren said, and J dams. You know what those do better than I do. Would you explain why those two munitions are of particular significance to the
Sure.
IDF right now?
Yeah, the 155s are the infantry of the artillery, if you will, the main battery. You need them for massive fires, moving up. Again, think of rolling thunder, rolling back. You just need a lot of artillery shells to do that. There's a stash of those, if you will, as part of the war reserve system that the United States has there. So, opening those gates, we had let some of those go up to the Ukrainians before this crisis. Now it's looking like the Israelis are going to need some replenishment there as well. And then the JDAMs, um, Joint Direct Effect Munitions, are the air version of that. They're not expensive. They can be kitted onto existing bombs, and they can deliver with more precision. So you combine those two together, and you can really reduce the ability of the Hezbollah to conduct what Israel's really afraid of here, which is a massive air assault against Israel that comes from the surface to surface missiles, about 130,000 of them by some estimates that Hezbollah holds. Those can be reduced both with the artillery and then with the JDAM packages.
Now, Admiral, you've run a carrier strike force before. We've got one in the Med. It may be involved. I'd like to know whether you think it ought to be involved from the get go in the Hezbollah strike if our diplomatic efforts fail. But if it does get fired upon, how does it protect itself? What is its greatest threat from Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard?
Yeah, two kind of different scenarios here, but let's take the carrier that's down in the North Indian in the North Indian Ocean. They are conducting the strikes against the Houthis. That's the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group. They have a surrounding group of very capable guided missile destroyers and cruisers. They probably have a submarine operating with them. They've got plenty of defensive capability. And of course, the air wing, as you know well, can put up combat action patrols around the carrier to help with that defense. It's a defense in depth. I think that carrier would be in very good shape and well protected. At the moment, off the west coast of Lebanon, we had the carrier Ford. We sent them home. That was a good move because we saw that the war wouldn't move to the north for some number of months. So Ford is back in Norfolk, refitting, resting. If necessary, she could be brought back, or that northern air effort could be flown out of NATO bases in Greece, from Germany if necessary. You could even fly jets up from the Red Sea if necessary. I don't think you'd do that. You'll probably build U.S. air capability from Europe, possibly bring a carrier back. That carrier, the one operating in the Eastern Med, I'd be more concerned about because of Hezbollah's number of missiles, the threat of small boats. Those are much more navigable waters. Carrier would be in a somewhat more vulnerable position. But for the moment, that carrier is safely back in Norfolk. So there's a snapshot, two different locales in both places. Believe me, that one-star, two-star admiral in command of the carrier strike group, he is thinking 24/7 about job one, which is protecting his own forces before he or she goes into the offensive combat side of things.
So the second question, should the United States act jointly with Israel from the get go? It is clear to me, I'm not putting words in your mouth, Iran has launched strikes on Iraq. They have launched strikes on Pakistan. They have got the IRGC in Syria and Lebanon. They're in for a regional war. Should we let them take the first shot at us, or should we take the first shot at Hezbollah in Lebanon?
I think we are still at a point where we can respond, although we need to do so more aggressively in each of these discrete scenarios. So, kudos to the administration for finally starting to launch these strikes against the Houthis. We ought to be ramping those up rapidly. We ought to be going more forcefully against Iranian proxies, attacking our forces in Iran, Syria. And Hezbollah, we ought to be giving the signal to Iran that yes, we we will strike Hezbollah with Israel if Hezbollah makes another offensive move. I don't think we are quite at the point where we ought to be saying to Israel, let's conduct an immediate preemptive strike. I don't think we're there yet. We still have a couple of rounds to go with Iran, but I'd say, Hugh, it's a 35 to 50% chance that we're going to end up striking Hezbollah alongside Israel.
Now, you normally don't do politics, but I'd like your assessment of this. There's a supplemental deal proposed by Senate Democrats and the president: aid for Israel, aid for Ukraine, some tweaks to border law. Republicans in the House say, we want aid to Israel, we want aid to Ukraine, and we want a border wall of 900 miles that will cost between $2 and $6 billion, a fraction of the rest. I am in the latter. I do not do the deal unless I get all three things done. What does Admiral Stavridis say?
I think there's a fourth element in the deal that's worth mentioning, which is additional aid to Taiwan. So, my view, these are four discrete but interlocked national security concerns. All of them are important. Israel, obviously, Ukraine. Our southern border is a national security concern. And Taiwan, I think if we get aid there soon, particularly after the recent election, all the better. I want to see the two political sides here come together and negotiate. If the border is the sticking point, I would want to look at all the options on the table. I think building border walls makes sense in the right places on the wall. As you know, it's 1,800 miles from ocean to ocean. Let's not try for 1,800 miles. We need four walls, four sections.
Now, we need about half the border with a wall. And I always use 2,900, maybe it's 1,800 and 800. I'll leave it to the pros, but it just seems so obvious to do all four things. Admiral Stav, good to see you. Follow him on Twitter, X, at Stavridis J. Stavridis J.